And so they both go tumbling down the stairs, and she's like, they like break everything.
Yeah, they brought up
Yeah, let's go.
like some out-of-state photographer or something. And I just so happened to be catching fish the day that they were shooting the picture.
Like rock.
And that has just
Like the.
never go there.
Yeah, they like fell down. Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I think some labs made a lot of money off me.
Yeah. I just like.
There are a lot of doctors so labs. So.
I think we're set. We are recording.
Cool.
You know this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he works today.
Nice.
Laser pointer. Yeah, if you could just stay. You just stay within the general area of the laptop. Just so that they can hear. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
I will introduce you.
Oh, I can't. You. I have like a. At least, oh, right. Exactly. I was like, yeah. I know you were like, no, that's.
That's got proceeds. From this.
We're gonna start with standing. Like it out. You're like so. You PhD with your friend.
Or like Fred.
Friend.
Yes, Dr. Fred Harrison. You'll know it when you see it. How about that?
I don't wanna.
Totally fine. I mean, you're not gonna be testing about it.
Oh, I just.
Yeah, I have current events, the first slide.
Okay. I don't think I'm. I don't think I'm a bandit. I'm just gonna go. I know. Wow. I love my son.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Stone Lab Seminar Series, our Thursday night lectures for our college season. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, those of you that are online joining us. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Harrison Freed. He is one of our own, but I mean that, what I mean by that is he is not just one of the Ohio State University's own, but he is one of Stone Lab's own. And he's going to talk about his pathway to how he got here. He's been teaching our environmental policy course for the past three years now. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Harrison. Dr. Freed, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. See how many people we got online? 4, 3, including us. 4, including us. Thank you for being here. I know many of you have to be here. Let's talk together for the next 45 minutes to an hour about how Ohio's environmental professionals collaborate to confront this crazy word that I like to call environmental variability. let's start off by talking about my pathway to my career. I know that oftentimes these seminars are a great chance to see how different people have had very windy pathways to end up where they are. I think I'm atypical in that I'm early career and my pathway so far has been very linear. My undergraduate career started at Ohio State University. I did a REU up here at Sun Laboratory. We have 4 amazing REUs this year. If you're taking a 1-week class right now and you're interested about research at Ohio State, talk to the 4 people, 3 right here, 4 somewhere else, about their work. They're up here for 8 weeks working on research related to all the topics that are cool up here at the island. So I did one of those when I was a junior in college. I looked at fish physiology. I wanted to know if algal blooms made it harder for fish to swim. I think you'll see that the research I did after that was nothing remotely close to fish swimming performance. But for me, I really wanted to focus on the intersection of environmental science and policy. I knew the entire time I was focusing on fish that I would never be a fish scientist. I wanted to do policy. And to do that, I knew that I had to have a fundamental understanding of how the world works. I wanted to know enough about ecology to make informed management decisions. So fast forward a couple of years later, I completed my Master of Science here at Ohio State University in Columbus. My focus transitioned from from environmental science to environmental policy. I research environmental governance. You're going to see a study that came out of the master's program. I focus a lot on theory, why people make the decisions they do in a very complex environmental management decision about who to partner with and what issues to work on. A couple years later, I completed my PhD in the same department. And I spent some time out in Colorado looking at how stakeholders prepare for dealing with wildfire risk mitigation. Spent a little bit of time teaching at Sun Lab, and I still love doing that. And I decided that I don't really like doing theory research. I like doing applied research. So you'll see my transition as a researcher from someone who is focusing on theoretical dimensions of policy to applied approaches to how people can come together using data to make more informed management decisions. That's me in 2015, and a friend named Will, who I took the oceanography class when I was a junior in high school. I also took a 1-week course, the Intro to Aquatic Bio, when I was a high school student as well. So I know we have some students in that course. And that was my first dive into Sun Laboratory back, I forget what year. But this could be one day. You could be up here giving a talk at Sun Lab. Just keep at it. Okay, my timeline. I'm out of school now. So I think it was about time to find a job after I just continued directly from undergraduate to PhD. And that's where I landed 12 days later after graduating, starting as the 3rd director of the Environmental Professionals Network, which is an organization that is part of the School of Environment and Natural Resources. And it's a wonderful way, service of the school that is meant for stakeholders across the state to connect with each other and develop really cool partnerships and projects. It's a great way to act like an entrepreneur, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a little bit. So clearly, I've been at Ohio State since I was in high school. I had a dot number as a junior in high school, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. You might, if you're pursuing a graduate program, you might be told by some people, hey, you should probably go somewhere different than you went to undergrad. I don't really think that's necessarily important. At Ohio State, there are so many different people you can work with. I worked with, fish ecologists. I worked with policy experts. Yes, you might want to go to different universities to get different perspectives and learn different ways of thinking, but you can do that at the same university, just work with different people. So don't feel like you ever need to move. A lot of researchers might think that. I disagree. Plus, if you move, you don't get Sun Lab, right? Okay, so a little roadmap for the presentation. I'll give you a little bit of background about the theoretical dimensions of the research that I've done. I'll talk about social ecological systems. My students are probably tired of hearing me say that word, systems. All of my research thinks about the world as basically a map of dots and lines that connect with each other in really important ways. So I'll talk through 2 different studies, and then I'll give you an exciting announcement about my job at the Environmental Professionals Network. So some background. I think we probably all agree here that environmental issues, especially today, are highly, highly complex, both socially and ecologically. So consider the issue harmful algal blooms. Very topically relevant here at Sun Laboratory. If you take a look at the composition of stakeholders who are involved in the management of harmful algal blooms, you could come up with a list of those logos, and that is just a small subset of who actually is out there dealing with this problem. So I'll list out a few. You have EPA, ODA, you have the City of Toledo, you have Bowling Green researchers, you have nonprofits and the Lake Erie Foundation, you have Ohio Sea Grant. These are names that you probably have heard of, but you might not have thought about the fact that all of them are doing their own piece of the puzzle when it comes to managing harmful algal blooms. To make matters even more complex, let's talk about the ecology. We all know that weather variability is changing over time, and more severe rainfall coupled with changing land use patterns in Northwest Ohio, including the domination of agriculture in the Maumee River Basin, leads to harmful algal blooms. Yes, we all know this. That causes fish kills. When you have fish kills and when you have, these blooms like in 2014 in Toledo that cut off the water supply, well, you have people who are disproportionately affected by whether they can, first of all, be aware that there is toxic water coming out of their faucet. And if they're aware of it, do they have a car? Can they drive to get bottled water? So environmental vulnerabilities, environmental justice, as a topic, all these sorts of issues are interconnected. So what I want you to start thinking about is harmful algal blooms as an example of a policy issue arena where you have extreme amounts of complexity, both socially and ecologically. And I'm going to show you empirically how a researcher can map that out. The crux of the research that I'll present to you is that when you add up all these interconnections, you get really complex networks. And the structure of that network is essential if you're going to determine the outcomes. Is this a sustainable system? Is it not? Oftentimes, you can predict the sustainability of a governance system based off of how complex and the sort of building blocks that make up the network. So let's talk about networks. Not that guy. A network like this. You all know what a trophic cascade is. You all know what a food web is. We learned this in middle school, high school ecology principles, right? That's a network. You have components, which are maybe fish in the lake. Those fish are connected to each other via relationships, in that case, predator-prey relationships. Now, those fish are also connected to fisheries in specific boating vessels through who is catching what kind of fish species. And then those boating vessels might be connected with each other if they're collaborating about, hey, the best fishing spot to find a channel darter is right over here, right? I don't think anyone's harvesting channel darter, especially not in Lake Erie. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about why use networks and what do networks consist of. Network theory essentially is utilizing network data, which consists of nodes and links. So nodes are the circles, links are the lines, pretty simple. So this triangle that I have right here, I'm going to run through quite a bit in this presentation. So you got to get this to understand what's coming next. In this triangle, you have the A blue circle. That's the stakeholder. Basically, like think of an organization like the EPA. That organization is connected to an issue on the upper left. So maybe that organization, the Ohio EPA, is managing for water quality in Lake Erie. So there's a dotted line. Sorry, there's a solid line representing that relationship. We know that water quality, the issue on the upper left, is ecologically connected with the topic of, let's say, nutrient pollution. So maybe you can imagine a very thick, solid line connecting those two issues. The question then becomes, does the Ohio EPA also consider nutrient pollution while they're working on water quality? They better, because obviously those are two very highly intertwined issues. So you could imagine that there would be a closed triangle when we're considering Ohio EPA's simultaneous management of two interrelated issues. Does that make sense as a building block of a network? So the study that I'll first present to you essentially takes a look at environmental variability in Ohio and diagnoses how many of these closed triangles versus open triangles we have and what conditions lead stakeholders, so organizations, to be more likely to close that gap. The technical term for this is called an integrative gap. An integrative gap essentially is any instance when an actor or a stakeholder, I'll use those words interchangeably, fail to account for ecological interdependence. So I drew this figure. It didn't come out that good, but you can imagine that you have all these different stakeholders in any given system. They're managing different components of the landscape. For instance, you might have a government department that's focusing on water quality. The question then becomes, is that government department also thinking about the related issues to water quality, such as human health? And if they're not, that's a fragmented sort of representation in the system. See, the idea is that if you have more gaps in a system over time, you're going to have worse outcomes. The question then is, what leads actors to close those gaps? This example comes from quite literally the field trip that my students and I went on today, where you have the city of Toledo Public Service Department that we just visited earlier this morning that is very much focused on water quality and stormwater runoff management. So the question is that organization considering multiple issues that are interconnected at the same time? If you add up all these triangles in a whole governance network and you get a lot of broken ones, it's probably not a good thing. So let me tell you a little bit about how we collect the data. In Ohio, anyone want to guess how many environmental organizations there are that I collected? Just some of them are small nonprofits, some of them are big organizations that are government departments. Anyone want to guess how many there are in Ohio? 1,000?
More than 80.
More than 88, right? There is one in every county. What's that? Did you just say 1,000 and now you're going 225? You said 1,000? All right, somewhere in the middle of your two. It's about 650 organizations back when the data was collected in 2020. There are definitely more now. I should say the data was collected by identifying some really key organizations. If you've ever been to an organization's website, you'll see they often list their partners. So if you click on every partner, that partner is going to list their partners, and that partner is going to list their partners. This is called snowball sampling in social sciences. And it's a method to quickly get a census of who all is out there. So that's what I did. I found almost 700 organizations. And the fourth National Climate Assessment is a report that was issued by the United States government. The fifth one just came out a couple of years ago. The sixth one is on hold. Essentially, this is a report that is co-authored by experts in climate science. Essentially, they identify the most pressing environmental issues in different regions of the United States. So I read through the Midwest report and I identified 19 different environmental issues. So these are some of the organizations that are involved in environmental management across the state of Ohio. You'll recognize many of them. They differ by organization type, as well as a number of different attributes. In this list alone, you can see that we have businesses represented, universities, federal, state, local government, special districts, nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera. This is complex. It gets very complex very quickly. And that's kind of the point. And then here are the issues. You'll recognize many of them. Some of them we're not allowed to talk about anymore, but all these issues are either posed or exacerbated by environmental variability, climate change. And for the most part, I want you to be thinking about these issues as comprising a system. All these issues are somehow interconnected with every other issue that's on the screen. And if you ask anyone who works in any of these spaces, they'll tell you the same thing. They're all interconnected. Sorry, I had to do it. Okay, I'll stop making that joke. Collecting data on links. So relationships that comprise the network. Actors are connected to issues. What is that actor specializing in? Well, if you go to any stakeholder's website, they're going to talk about their mission. Pretty simple. So what I did is I went through all 600, 700 websites and I coded what issues every one of those organizations focuses on. Ecological interdependencies are a little more tough because there's so many ways to think about how every issue is connected to every other issue. So what I did is I found 3 experts in the state for each of these 19 issues. I had an hour-long phone call with each of them, and I asked them through a series of questions. For instance, pretend I'm talking to an expert in water quality. Maybe I call up Justin, and I said, tell me how water quality impacts soil erosion. Then tell me how soil erosion impacts water quality, and so on for every one of those other 18 issues. And then when you add all that up, you get a really, an aggregated network of issue connections and their interconnectivity. And this is what it looks like. So you have in total over 600 organizations that are also working with each other in various ways. We'll talk about that in the next study. And those organizations are working on different issues, and those issues are interconnected with each other. Complex. Kind of looks like a bowl of spaghetti, a little bit. That's the point. So what we're going to do now is pull apart those little triangles from this network and see how many of each type we have. So again, as a reminder of the research question, the whole point is to figure out when is it more likely for an organization to close that gap? When is it more likely for them to focus on sets of related issues? My first hypothesis was that stakeholders are more likely to close that gap when you have really strong interconnections. We all know that water quality is highly interrelated with nutrient management. That should be an obvious interconnection, and it probably is going to be a closed triangle in most cases. Following me? In other cases, there might be more hard to read connections between issues. For instance, the connection between forestry and water quality might be a little bit less strong. It's definitely strong, but less strong. So the hypothesis here is saying it might be less likely for a closed triangle to exist for that pair of issues. Following me so? Okay, mostly nods. I'll move on. Another variable that I was interested in is how much attention do each of these issues have? For the issues that have the highest levels of public attention, the organization is most likely to close gaps for those because maybe those interconnections between the issues are more popular as well, and therefore more likely to be managed. And then third, we predicted that government actors, compared to other types of organizations, are more likely to close gaps, potentially because they have expertise on their staff, they have more resources, and a variety of other reasons. All right, I'm not going to bore you with this. Basically, it's a network regression. If anyone wants to ask me about it, I can tell you. Social scientists can do data too. I know all you natural scientists in the room are rolling your eyes. We do complex data as well. The next study is qualitative though. Okay, so some results. Stakeholders are, according to hypothesis 1 in that basic regression model that we ran, stakeholders are more likely to close integrated gaps, these triangles, when pairs of issues are more biophysically interrelated. So that confirmed the first hypothesis. The second one was additionally confirmed, where integrative gap closure was more likely when issues are popular themselves. And I found this to be very interesting. It wasn't government departments specifically, like local, state, or regional. It was soil and water conservation districts. Anyone familiar with soil and water conservation districts and what they do? Handful of you? There's one in all 88 of our counties. So Amy is right. We have at least 88 organizations because there are 88 soil and water conservation districts. Interestingly enough, they were the most likely organization type to close these gaps, despite the fact that they worked on relatively few issues. What that means is that they just choose very interrelated sets of issues like soil and water quality or nutrients. The soil and water conservation districts, as the name might imply, focus on issues that are relevant to land management or landowners or people that are farmers that need resources in a community. Okay, I'm doing good on time. Study 2. Let's apply network data. So you just heard that we had data about 600 plus organizations and also who they all work with. I didn't really give you that part yet. We also had data on what they worked on. That's really good information about partnerships and the status of a governance system that might actually benefit real people. Can you believe that? Could benefit real people. That first study publish in a journal, cool. But what does it do in reality? Not much. It might inform theory about how governance systems work, and some researchers might read it and learn something. But that's not really what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to collect data that was actually meaningful. So that's the point here. Who has the old Wii? Who knows what this image is? Someone tell me.
Me channel.
That's the Me channel. I know that's what Bengals was going to say. The Me channel. What happens when you press the whistle on the Me channel? They all line up. This is how I think about collective action. So study one, I was showing you essentially individual organizations' management decisions by themselves. We did not think about how they might interact with other stakeholders. This magical word called collaboration. So when I use the word collective action throughout the rest of this seminar, I just want you to think about blowing the whistle. Essentially, we're all at first kind of walking our own direction. We're all managing climate, environment in different ways, but there are ways to do that in essentially, so we're all facing the same direction. We're all rowing in the same direction. That's collective action. So we talked about integrated gaps. Now I'm going to tell you about a different kind of gap, a different triangle. This is called a collaborative gap. And as the name might imply, the collaborative gap is any sort of instance when two actors who are interdependent are just not working together. So why is it important to close a collaborative gap? Well, it helps to ensure that people who are interdependent are coming up with management activities that are actually compatible with each other. It can prevent future conflict. It reduces any sort of ecological uncertainty. And it, most of all, helps people to avoid reinventing the wheel. If I've done something successfully and you're working on something similar, but you're kind of, I don't know, finding issues, you might benefit from having a conversation with me so that we can avoid duplicating efforts. There are so many benefits of closing these gaps. I'm sure you could think of many. So again, an example from my class's field trip earlier today. The City of Toledo Environmental Service Department has the expertise, the wherewithal to develop green infrastructure projects. So like rain gardens. You all familiar with rain gardens? They know how to make it, but they don't know where to put it. The Junction Coalition is a community group, a nonprofit based in the Junction neighborhood in Toledo, an underfunded sort of forgotten area that once had 30,000 residents, now has 6,000, and has definitely seen many forms of decline. However, they have passion. They have community knowledge. They have sort of an understanding of, for instance, where are the best sites in the community that need the most help. They know who needs to be part of the solution. The City of Toledo's Public Service Department does not have those connections. They can't say, hey, if we build a rain garden in this neighborhood, everyone's going to like it. That's the job of the community group. So this is a great example of closing a collaborative gap. And we saw this in our field trip today, where we went to a meeting and both of these organizations were in the same room talking about how they co-develop green infrastructure projects in that neighborhood. Really cool. All right, let me tell you about the inspiration for a project. And again, I just mentioned that creating theoretical sort of data sets is fun, but it doesn't really move the needle in my opinion. So back in 2019, I wanted to print something out at the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Sciences library. Has anyone been there? Coffee there kind of sucks. It's too sweet. So I was there printing something out because I didn't have a printer at home. And I'm the only person because it's summer. And then all of a sudden, Joe Campbell, who was the director of the EPN before me, walked across and I was in the first semester of my master's program. And he asked me what I was working on. Told him climate change back when it was allowed to be a focus of students. I was talking about climate change essentially. And he said, oh, did you know there's an event happening in Delaware County next week? You should definitely go. This was what the event was. It was about envisioning a regional hub for climate interested organizations and stakeholders. So this image I took the other day of the packet that everybody received at this event. It's a map. You can see where Columbus is. You can see the 270 belt. And then all those red dots represent different organizations that have some sort of say in climate change. People who are working toward mitigation of greenhouse gases or adapting to the effects of climate change. And the whole purpose was it was a working summit for climate change collaboration, energy transformation, and small town resurgence. So very big picture ideas. But the goal at the end of the day was to figure out who in the area should be involved in this hub. How can they better coordinate their actions? How can we make sure that we're rowing in the same direction, like the Need for It, right? But nothing really happened. Kind of fizzled out after that meeting, and COVID then happened a year later, and we were left with nothing. So that inspired the work that I did on my PhD. The guiding question was, can we use the network data like what you already saw to help create that hub, that environmental hub? And to do that, the goal was to engage stakeholders around this concept of collaborative gaps. Why should a researcher engage? Well, there are a couple of reasons. I'll mention 3 right now, but there are definitely more than this. When you engage, when you co-develop ideas with the community that you're studying, you can create usable information based off of the perspective of practitioners. If I have an idea about how a system works, but I don't confirm that with people who are part of the system, what am I doing? So I'm looking to create usable information. I can empower stakeholders to make better informed decisions about maybe who they want to partner with. That's the goal of this study. And I'm enhancing the project's rigor and validity, because the measurements that I think I'm measuring are more valid because they're confirmed by the actual study subjects. So this is what the network looked like in this study. The first study was all of Ohio. This study is only Central Ohio. There are the same type of nodes. So in this case, stakeholders, there are 171 of them that had some sort of presence in Central Ohio. The issues were the same that I just went over in the first study. And in this time, we added the layer of actor-actor links. Essentially, in what ways do actors connect with each other? Through partnerships. So what I did is I had an hour-long interview with as many of those 171 organizations as I could. I think I did 108 or so interviews. This was during COVID, so everyone was working from home, and they were very interested in talking to somebody. So it was easy to get a high response rate. Anyways, collected data on reported partnerships between these 108 organizations, as well as saying, what do you work on day to day? Of these 19 issues, tell me which ones you're connected with. When you add that all up, you can't really see the green lines, but there are, they're kind of faint on the screen. You get a very complex social ecological network, but it's a little bit more manageable because now we're just looking at Central Ohio. Okay, this is what I'm really happy to tell you about. This is the Columbus Environmental Networking Tool. This was the hub. I got a call one day from my advisor. He said, I know you want to create this website that houses your network data. I had very little coding experience, so I could do stats in R, but I didn't know how to make a website. Luckily, a junior in high school reached out to my advisor asking for experience and research. He said he really liked to code. And Rohit completely learned how to use R Shiny, which is like an interactive sort of version of R, to develop a platform online. That was a wrapper for the same networks that I've been showing you, interactive. So let me tell you about how one person might be able to utilize this website, which is still online. I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation. So if I'm interested in water quality, I can go to this website. I can choose the issue water quality and then immediately be shown all the stakeholders who are working on that topic. So this is what it looks like. Because you're all students and staff here at Stone Laboratory, I wanted to focus in on Ohio Sea Grant for this seminar. So you could select your organization within that network. and start to piece together, am I in the middle of the network or am I on the edge? And the idea here is if I'm in the middle, then I might be a more well-resourced or organization that has more information, more partnerships. But if I'm on the edge, I'm more likely to be cut off because I don't have as many connections to the rest of the network. So unsurprisingly, Ohio Sea Grant is right in the middle because it's a very popular entity here within water quality in Ohio. But this is the coolest part, in my opinion. We have, for every organization that's part of the network, and there are 108 of them, we have customized recommendations about who they should partner with. So the idea, again, of a collaborative gap is that anytime you have two organizations that are working on the same thing, they probably would benefit to work together. So what we did is essentially give a top 5 list for every organization. This is who you might consider working with because you work on so many of the same issues, but you're not currently working together. So for Ohio Sea Grant, we recommended they partner with Sustainable Columbus. We recommended they partner with all these other organizations who they weren't currently working with. That might have changed. But in any case, we're trying to close collaborative gaps utilizing data collected in networks. Yeah, we can maybe publish this. That's cool. But like more than that, we're working with communities and we're recommending ideas that might help to make them more resilient to change. So again, these are the triangles where Ohio Sea Grant does work with the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. And they both work on water quality. So in this case, that would be counted as a closed gap. We're not going to recommend that partnership because it already exists. But Ohio Sea Grant does not partner with the Ohio Environmental Council, despite the fact that both of them focus on water quality. So maybe that's a partnership that could happen in the future. So we took this website and we took it to the EPN. Very, very fortunate that the past director gave me a chance to present and get data at the event prior to me working there. And we invited everyone who's part of the network. We said, hey, you gave us the data. Your organization is on this website. Would you be open to coming to this forum, taking a look at what we created and letting us know what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, and what you recommend that we improve? So we had 35 people at one time who were part of the network that came to this event. And we split them into different focus groups. In those focus groups, they essentially told me those similar types of things about how they would use it, reasons why it might suck, and what they would do to make it less sucky. We coded that using qualitative thematic analysis. I can tell you a little bit more about that later. I'm not going to get into it here. It's good to be mixed methods and able to adapt to different kinds of approaches. You can see in this presentation, we use very complex network analyses as well as different kinds of approaches to studying qualitatively how people can come up with different themes. So these were the themes. For uses, people said that, many people said that they would utilize this tool to close collaborative gaps, essentially. Someone even said, I think some organizations could see that their work is duplicative by using the tool. And as a result, maybe they can merge their resources. That's kind of what we were hoping to get out of the responses to this focus group. Additionally, some people said that it's just a good thing to learn about who else is out there. They were shocked by how many other people there are that are focusing on a certain topic area. Someone even said, the good thing about this website for me is I'm seeing people that I didn't even know existed. The limitations, we kind of split into 3 different categories. They are interpretability, relevancy, and validity. You all just saw that very complex bowl of spaghetti and the different networks. Unless you're a trained network scientist, you might not be able to quickly diagnose what that means. And people told us exactly that. They said, for me, it's information overload. Fair. So there's some strategies of things that we can do to reduce that information overload. We can have different types of presenting the data, different presentation forms. We can have more filtering abilities so that you're not looking at a graph of 100 nodes. You're looking at subsets of that, maybe 30 nodes at a time, something more manageable. The second category is data relevancy. This really stuck out to me. Someone said, Water quality is a really big topic. In this room alone, there are probably people that are working on so many subcomponents of water quality. And if I told you, yeah, Justin, you're working on water quality, and Alessia, you're working on water quality, you should work together, you might say, that's fine, because we actually focus on the same thing. But if I told Zach to partner with Justin on a project, because he focuses, tangentially on water quality, that might not make sense. Because you have specific sub-focuses within this umbrella topic. So relevancy of the data that we're basically telling people makes sense, might not always make sense for every application. And you gotta learn that the hard way. How do you prevent that? Well, you engage community members much earlier. So for the purpose of this project, we utilize those same 19 issues from the first study. Remember, I just read that report and I pulled them out. I kind of chose the issues that made sense to me based off of my understanding of the reading. Those same issues might not make the similar sense to everybody who's part of the network. So how do you fix that? You work with people earlier on in the process. And then data validity. The data that was on that website, and if you go to it still today, I collected in 2021. If you were to go to that website today and check out who I recommended to be your partner, you might say, no way, I will definitely not work with that person, because we actually already do work with them. So the validity of the data is essentially saying databases are only as good as the timeliness of its data. So you got to have regular updates. Connections ebb and flow over time, and so too should an engaged tool like this. So if we're not going to update the data, what's the point? I'm going to get there. I'll show you. But let me first give you a conclusion. Engaging with practitioners, like in the way that we did, can show that stakeholders value information about closing collaborative gaps. So using the qualitative approach that we did in the study, it became clear that there are significant opportunities to engage people with network data. You don't necessarily need to show them these big complex graphs, because it can be information overload. But for the most part, there's an opportunity here. And there's so many network scientists, like these researchers from around the world whose studies I read when I was in graduate school, who don't do any engagement. Why not? You have data about people and what could be better about their systems. Why not give it back to them? So there's a huge opportunity. And these sort of design principles about how to make a tool like the beta version that we created better, they can make that engagement so much better. And that's what we're doing right now with the EPN. We're trying to make this a reality, at least in Ohio. So enter the EPN, an organization that has been around for 13 plus years. Our mission at the Environmental Professionals Network is to connect our community. Look at that. This slide was created by the EPN before I became a staff member, and it has a network in it. Perfect. Helping people grow professionally, inspiring community members in the careers. These are sort of additional aspects of what we do. So what is the EPN? How many of you go to Ohio State, or at least are based in Columbus? Okay, about half of you. If you're not, hey, we have online live streaming of our programs. It's great quality. We have professional live streamers. So our programs are in person, typically offered in Columbus. We had one 2 days ago that I dragged my students to in New Albany. Thank you for spending 12 hours with me. Our programs, are attended by, over the course of a year, thousands of environmental professionals who are looking to engage and connect and learn and be inspired and grow. We focus on these different topic areas. So if you think about climate, energy, sustainability, natural resources, there's a topic for you that we'll focus on. For instance, this was our Earth Day event in 2025. A couple of months ago, we brought in almost 20 different speakers to talk about farm to fashion. Farm to fashion, what is that? The whole idea is the clothes that we wear, they should incorporate more sustainable natural fibers like cotton, wool, hemp, flax, you name it. Did I know anything about those fibers before I got this job? No. But there are so many experts on these different topic areas, and we're always working with different experts for all of our monthly programs. Really, really cool, charismatic, fascinating people. So we even for this program, we brought in a 5th generation Black farmer from Tanner, Alabama. He flew in with his 2 sons to our program. He partners with, oh, that's my mom. Gotta let her in. He partners with Victoria's Secret, essentially a sustainable supply chain route directly from United States to United States, rather than shipping in synthetic material from across the world. And it was fascinating because you had this farmer from Alabama talking directly alongside a sustainability professional from Victoria's Secret about why their collaboration is so important. And that's just one of the many kinds of things we focus on in our programs. We just had this event on Tuesday about sustainability and growth at the New Albany International Business Park. The whole idea was we wanted to connect environmental professionals, people who are ready to do the work, with corporate groups, people who lead Intel and Amazon Web Services and Bath and Body Works and all these different major companies and data centers that are in Northeast Columbus. You probably have heard the news about all of the growth in the region. Those communities, those corporations, they want to do right. They want to connect with environmental professionals and give them money so that the communities have better environmental health, better community health. And when you have both of those things, those corporations can be more profitable. But what's missing is that corporate professionals, these people who work 12 hours a day, they don't have all the time to know who the conservation folks are in a community. So the point of this event was to connect these 2 groups. What's in it for the corporations? They can be better in touch with their community. What's in it for the community groups, the environmental professionals? They can get money to do projects. So all our events are about connecting people. In July, we have another program that's about environmental education. The whole purpose here is we want educators, no matter what school district they work for, no matter if they focused on environmental education or not, to be able to connect with environmental professionals, people like yourself, so that they can have their students be exposed to nature and understand that that is a viable career pathway. So most of us in this room, you might have first, experience, hey, I could study fish for a career. That might have been because you went to a well-funded school district or you had like a really great teacher who inspired you. That's not the case for everybody. So how can we create pathways for everyone? We're basically trying to do that at this program. Our speakers come from a variety of organizations, the same kind of types of organizations that I talked about in the network. Here are some of them. This is what they look like. The upper left image is from our March program about water reuse. We have panels of speakers. The bottom left program was about climate anxiety. Anyone feeling anxious about the state of our environment? This program was about how can you incorporate mental health practices to make yourself feel better at the end of a long day where maybe you didn't get a grant that would have saved the world. And then we have these in-person networking sessions where, yeah, we've all been to programs before or events where you kind of go, you sit down, you hear people talk, and then you leave, but you don't really talk to the people next to you. The talking to the people next to you part is what we care about the most. So we have these networking sessions. If I have convinced you to come to our programs, go to epn.osu.edu and you can find an event and click that big red register here button. Students come for free. And when you come to a program, guess what? You get coffee, you get actually good breakfast food, not like a comment. You get actually, I'm not shading Sonlab at all. I promise that was not intentional. The Sonlab breakfast is good. We have good breakfast too. Hot breakfast food every time. And it's priceless, the networking, right? You're spending $0 to get coffee, food, and network. Pretty cool. And if you can't make it, let's say you're not in Columbus and you can't make it to our venue by 8 in the morning, well, you can watch from the comfort of your own bed on our live stream. You might be thinking, hey, if I'm watching at home, I can't ask questions to the really cool panel. You can. You can comment your question into the live stream, and I will be standing there with a microphone at the event, and I will relay your question to the panel so you can still get your message across. This is what we have coming up. Has anyone seen the movie Dark Waters? Some of you. Very cool movie. It's about an environmental attorney from the West Virginia area that essentially sued DuPont Chemical because of Teflon dumping that poisoned the water in the community. Famous lawyer, Rob Bilott. He's played by Mark Ruffalo in that movie. We have Rob Bilott coming to our event in September to talk about the state of environmental law in Ohio. In October, we have an event about sustainable finance. So we're talking about how you as an individual, or if you work for a company or institution like Ohio State, can switch your investment portfolio to be more sustainable. We have an event about GIS, an event about pollinator habitat, and the list goes on. Every month, we're doing something different. So engage with us. You can do it in person or online. I encourage you to make an account on our website. By making an account on our website, you can view job listings. So we have employers from across the state who are partners with the EPN who have accounts. They post their jobs and internships. So many of you use this page, seriously. It's a great way to find good jobs. I know of people that have used this platform and they've found internships and careers. What I find to be really cool is our member directory. So we have over 2,500 enrolled environmental professionals across the entire state of Ohio. And what you could do is search through that directory of environmental professionals based off of expertise or location. So you can find someone who you might want to meet because they have a really cool job and you want to reach out to them. All right, here's that announcement, I promise. This is what we're working on. I've given you kind of a run through of my research experience. I showed you that website that has data from 2021 that hasn't been updated since. I'm working behind the scenes to integrate that idea into the EPN. So what we're doing essentially is enhancing our networking services online so that no matter where you are in Ohio, yes, you can go to an event in person, you can meet someone and become their partner. That's cool. But what if you can't? Well, you can do that online because we're creating a system that makes our members able to form more efficient and effective environmental connections. The idea is when you have an account, you can search through a directory and you can look for either people, projects, or organizations who focus on a specific topic area. So recycling or algal blooms or plastic and fish, whatever it might be, in a specific location. That's the idea. So it could be useful for people who are looking for somewhere to volunteer, someone to collaborate with on a research project, someone to come into their classroom to teach their students. Any possible topic when it comes to the environment, you could do it. So I encourage you, scan that QR code, create an account, take a look at our website, see what we can do for you, see how we can be a networking service for you. And at this point, I'd like to acknowledge the people who have contributed to this entire story from start to finish, especially the advisors that I had along the way, including Ramiro Berardo and Matt Hamilton. Suzanne Gray, too, I'll give a special shout out to. She was really the first person that believed in me from a research standpoint. We're very sad that she's no longer at Ohio State and she's up in Canada, her happy place. But I'll leave you with that and take any questions. I think we have 10 minutes.
Any questions for Dr. Freed?
Paul person in the back.
So I have a question about kind of your network with kind of the SET network, kind of correlating kind of groups that had similar interests. What about groups that I guess, you know, thinking like higher picture, like groups that would like lobby to senators, both, I don't want to say good and bad, but you know, with different interests in mind. How are those networks being done, or how would you kind of, I guess, perceive those?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is one of the limitations. There are so many ways that you can represent reality with dots and lines. Some better, some worse. The way I did it has its limitations. This is one of them. Some people told us, hey, you're recommending a partnership between me, a university research lab, and a nonprofit advocacy organization because we're both focusing on the same topic area. But in reality, that's not a connection that will ever happen. You're not going to see an independent research lab ever form a partnership with an advocacy group. It doesn't make sense. Yet we recommend it. So there are so many like attributes that you could add into a network, covariates, if you will, a link. And I'm happy to show you later over coffee how that looks. But in reality, yes, there are so many different factors that affect the way people create relationships. Did that answer your question, Zach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about like the update thing, that organization driven or to have somebody kind of keep up real time what you see on your end.
Harrison, could you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry for the folks online and my mom. The question was, what does the update structure look like to the website, essentially? So this is my full-time job, which is something that's very exciting for me. Yes, we make our events, but part of my job is driving across the state of Ohio, meeting with different professionals, encouraging organizations, maybe at a staff meeting, to join our website. I had a meeting with Nationwide Children's Hospital yesterday, and a couple dozen people were on the call. And I basically gave them similar slides, and a dozen of them joined the network. So over time, the idea is if someone creates an account, the information, like things that they work on, are going to come out of date after a year or two. I don't know. Depends on the person, what they're working on. So we have automatic emails that will go out to all the people who have an account to say, hey, log in. If what you're working on has changed, go in and update it so that when someone's searching for you, they can get accurate information. And how can we make sure that people want to do that? Well, on everyone's individual profile, it has their last updated date. So if you haven't updated your data for 5 years, someone's going to go to your profile because they think you're cool. They'll be like, I don't really know if it's worth reaching out to this person because very likely what they work on is out of date. They haven't checked out their profile in 5 years. So there are different strategies. We're kind of working through the updating process right now. We're working with essentially web vendors, people who are software engineers who are going to do this for us because I can't code. So it's a work in progress. Ask me in a year if it worked out or not.
Those of you online, you can put something in the chat if you have a question for Harrison, including Harrison's mom. So if you have anything.
Bella? So the question was if this website is going to be expanded to other states. The answer is no. SCNR being part of Ohio State, a land grant institution, we're here to serve the people of Ohio. If along the way we're inspiring people elsewhere to do something similar, then absolutely, we will be happy to share anything we can. I don't know about Ohio State intellectual property guidelines. I'm not a lawyer, but if it were up to me, I would give away code to anybody. Yeah. That's an excellent question. The question was, how does the EPN factor in politically? Because the EPN, with the number of people who come to our programs, might have an opportunity to effectuate change. Is that what you're saying? Well, we try to do that. We have programs that we're choosing very deliberately. Like these, topic areas that I showed you, they're not random. We have speakers who are coming in, they're talking about like current trends and new topics that relate to the environment. And we hand choose them to talk about, ways that everybody can learn about exciting projects that move the needle when it comes to the environment. So we might not be lobbying state senators. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to give people the information that they can utilize in their own organizational activities. So maybe someone who comes to our program might be able to use some information to make some difference in the state. I'll tell you one example. We had an event last December about deer management. We wanted to essentially talk about ways that communities can effectively manage their deer populations. We brought in someone from the city of Worthington in Ohio. We brought in someone from the city of Gahanna in Ohio, and they talked about how their cities have unique strategies to manage deer populations. If you take a look at the map of Columbus, those are really the only two neighborhoods or like suburbs in the city that have really significant deer management strategies. What that means is that the deer are just going to go somewhere else because they're being hunted in Gahanna and Worthington. So to actually effectuate change, you need deer management plans that are comprehensive across the entire city. At our event, there was someone from basically an analyst for the city of Columbus, for their city council, who was so inspired by what they heard that they, bought into this idea. They pitched a deer management plan to the city of Columbus, and now it's being drafted up. So now the biggest sort of footprint in the entire central Ohio region has some sort of deer management plan that they're working on. So that's the way that we move the needle, is by inspiring. We don't get involved politically, that's not our place. We are affected by politics, certainly. But overall, excellent question. Anything else? Yeah, Anna?
How do you feel non-responsive? Because when you were making an effort, you talked about contacting so many of the organizations and we didn't hear back from all of them. Are they eliminated from the network? Contact them?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, how do you deal with missing data in network analysis? For the purpose of a study, maybe you're working on some cross-sectional data set about who's connected to who. Missing data is a natural thing. And you just got to factor that in. You got to understand that the people who said yes to your questionnaire, the people who actually got on the phone with you, they're different from the people who did not get on the phone with you in some sort of meaningful way. And it's up to you as a researcher to explain what that difference might be and how that might affect your data. So the people who didn't respond to our email, they might be busier. They might be politically uninclined to talk about climate change because it could affect them in some sort of way. When it comes to a more engaged, like consistently updated network tool, if someone doesn't respond to you in 2025, it's fine. You can just reach out to them next year. They have staff turnover. You can kind of find your time. When the time is right, you can get back in with them. So it depends if your purpose is for research or for engagement. One more question. Yeah, Justin.
You recommend like you have collaborators. But you're already collaborating with a lot of people and you don't have enough time to collaborate with them. How would that?
Well, the question was from Dr. Chaffin about if an organization already has so many collaborators and we're saying that they should add another one, maybe that might not be the most optimal thing because they only have so much time in the day. I mean, you said it well. That's an unavoidable fact. You have 24 hours a day, hopefully just 8 at work per day. And it's not always a great thing to start a new partnership. Because every time you do, you have to deal with some sort of conflict about maybe different uses of the same word. You have to speak the same vernacular over time. So developing partnerships from ground zero is not a short experience. When people saw partnership ideas or recommendations that we have on our website, they might be thinking that, well, that's not really a feasible thing for me. And that's fine. They can just ignore it. That's our approach to the management. But it is something to consider. These are the sort of transaction costs of partnerships. And that's a huge component of the sort of research literature. Yes, I think I answered the question.
Okay, that about wraps it up. We're at 8 o'clock, so please join me in thanking Dr. Freed for his time. If you have a few seconds to fill out a Qualtrics survey on this seminar to let us at Stone Lab and Sea Grant know if it was a good seminar, a great seminar, or the most outstanding seminar you've ever seen in your life, please let us know that, because those are your only 3 options. There are no bad seminars here at Stone Lab. I hope you'll join us again next week. Those of you 1-weekers, obviously you won't be here, but thanks for joining. Thanks for joining online. There's one more chat. Is it Harrison's mom? Yay, awesome job. That was Lydia Shapota, one of our former semester at Stone Lab students from last year. Thank you, Lydia. And we will leave it there. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.